Once there was an explosion, a bang which gave birth to time and space. Once there was an explosion, a bang which set a planet spinning in that space. Once there was an explosion, a bang which gave rise to life as we know it. And then came the next explosion.
You don't get rich writing science fiction. If you want to get rich, you start a religion. L. Ron Hubbard, 1948. Welcome to the UCA, the United Cities of America, a bridge of knots amid the post-Reconstructionist era of the Death Stranding. The Death Stranding was an extinction-level event where the boundary between the world of the living and the dead collapsed. Spirits, known as BTs, or beached things, broke through from the other side. They dragged the living into death. They caused massive destruction. And they exist outside of time, haunting what's left of us. So, what are we doing today? We're asking a question. What if Kojima's spiritual sci-fi nightmare was more than just a metaphor? What if Death Stranding borrowed its divine horror not from mythology or psychology, but from Scientology? And now, for a trigger warning. If you're part of this religion and you can't divorce your daily practice from the rhetoric of your own religious texts, regardless of if they're currently used in modern practice, you're gonna hate it here. So now is the time to click off before you turn into a keyboard warrior. As well, if you're here for someone bashing on Scientology, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm not here to tear apart Scientology. I'm here to discuss the fascinating relationship between Death Stranding and Scientology. I'm also not claiming Kojima is a Scientologist, nor am I claiming Kojima purposefully related to Scientology. And if you enjoy deep dive essays that break apart our favorite IPs and characters, don't forget to consensually smash that subscribe button and tickle those share and like icons, because my YouTube overlords demand sacrifice. And I would like to apologize for my voice in this video and the next few videos to come. I have the vid. And with that, grab your monster energy and relax, because we're about to go a little deep. So, what are BTs?
Editing kit here. So I'm using a lot of official materials in this video from actual Scientology commercials about it or actual documentaries about it, but all of those things use copyrighted music. So I am ripping the music out of those materials, so that's why they're gonna sound a little weird.
You are a being, an intelligence, a consciousness, that part of you that is aware of being aware. In Scientology, we use the word thetan. We use thetan to avoid confusions with other concepts and beliefs regarding the soul or spirit. It isn't something you have. You wouldn't say, my thetan. You'd simply say, me. You have a body. You have a mind. You are a thetan.
And today, their troubled spirits are attached to human bodies by the thousands. Called body thetans, they cause endless problems. Only Scientology knows how to shake them loose.
You talk to them. And when you find out who they are and what they are, what they're doing, and what's making them stick around you, then they blow. And so you pay a lot of money. I mean, you have lots of body thetans. This process takes lots of time.
In Scientology, body thetans are immortal spiritual beings. They lived countless past lives, sometimes even in alien civilizations, and they're the source of consciousness itself. According to L. Ron Hubbard, thetans created the universe, but over time, they became trapped in physical bodies and forgot who they really were. Now they exist in us, as us, with no memory of their former power. And, before you ask, yes, in Scientology, body thetans are also called BTs. And this was the first thing that sent me down this rabbit hole. A rabbit hole I fell deeper into 6 years ago when I read Phantom Nugget's Reddit post. It is worth a read. My relations drawn are different in a lot of points, but that makes sense because I'm going off of studying religions, whereas he's mainly going off of the South Park episode, which was beautifully accurate to Hubbard's science fiction books, by the way. And as an author myself, world building wise, Hubbard was a fascinating sci-fi author. and I really think he could have found success author-wise if he'd done serial books instead of trying to do one big book.
Editing kit here, coming to you live from my closet because it has the best lighting and sound in this whole bitch. But I wanted to say, although I said in my original recording, I am an author, I don't typically read this genre, and I do not at all write this genre. What I do know is from being an editorial assistant how certain genres would work and what the expectations of those genres are. Now, given that, he did write in the specific book that I just referenced on screen a lot about evil corporations and the greed of a country. And as an American, I can vibe with that. Very Fallout, Outer Worlds kind of vibe. And the movie definitely flopped. It was not well done. But the world building in the books was definitely better than the movies. Again, both of them should have been serialized. Although, given the context of the religion and the controversies it has, I don't know that I would agree that it should be continued now. So, also for transparency, I think it's important to note L. Ron Hubbard is no longer with us. So anything that would be made of his would go to whoever holds his estate.
Phantom Nugget really pushed my curiosity. And for the last 6 years, I've been wanting to talk about this, but I've been deeply afraid to do so. And I think we all know why. But back to the comparison. In Death Stranding, we meet a similar concept, BTs, or beached things. These are the souls of the dead, stranded on the edge of existence after a catastrophic spiritual event called the Death Stranding. Like thetans, they're disembodied, parasitic, and invisible to most people. Now, here's where it gets wild. The term BT is not all that the two share. They also mirror body thetans. In Scientology texts, body thetans are disembodied spirits of other thetans who cling to a person and need to be audited away. They're seen as the reason for psychological and spiritual distress. Interestingly, body thetans are sometimes described as vaguely humanoid alien spirits, often with tentacles and distorted features. This eerie resemblance to the dark, floating tentacle forms of BTs in Death Stranding is what first made me do a double take. Shout out again to Phantom Nugget. His comment years ago about the parallel was the exact catalyst that triggered what became a 6-month ADHD hyperfixation and obsession of mine. I went on a binge of every available Scientology text or video I could find, from official materials to exposés from ex-members. It was an absolute blast. Don't get it twisted. I live for lore, mythology, and religious studies from an anthropological perspective. And this was my kind of rabbit hole. In Death Stranding, BTs cause devastation. They cling to you and drag you into the tar, into the darkness. Unless someone who has dooms, a mysterious ability that lets them sense or interact with BTs, most people are completely vulnerable. And then, contact with them often leads to deadly consequences. And it's not just BTs, it's the chiral matter they're made of, a dangerous spiritual residue that makes people sick. It's like an invisible burden on the living, a theme both Death Stranding and Scientology share. In both systems, the message is clear. There's something inside of you or around you that is not fully you, and it's making you sick, broken, or less than you could be. The only way forward? A spiritual upgrade. And in both cases, the price of that upgrade isn't cheap. Scientology costs you money, and Death Stranding costs you the ability to leave your home and connect with other humans. So what about the cosmology? Because both Scientology and Death Stranding have their own layered metaphysical maps. In Scientology, the universe is divided into 2 domains. The MEST universe, matter, energy, space, and time. This is the physical reality, the material world which we all move through. And, secondly, the Theta universe, a spiritual domain where thetans originate. It's the realm of thought, consciousness, and pure spirit. Thetans were once native to the Thetaverse, powerful, self-aware beings who exist beyond the confines of space and time. But over the eons, they became trapped in the MEST, forgetting who they were, bound to flesh and bound to suffering. Now, hold that structure up to Death Stranding. In Kojima's world, there's a similar buy system in place. The physical world, what remains of the United Cities of America, is broken and scarred by an extinction level event, whereas the beach is a metaphysical shoreline between life and death. It's personal, mutable, and accessible only by those who are attuned to it, through dooms, BBs, or their proximity to death. The beach behaves like the Thetaverse, a non-linear, surreal plane outside of normal time. Memories echo here, souls linger, and the rules bend. For most people, the beach is invisible and inaccessible, just like the Theta realm is forgotten by thetans stuck in the MEST. But for Sam, Fragile, and other doom carriers, that spiritual belt is very thin. And just like in Scientology, accessing the higher plane doesn't come without a price. In both stories, we're told that the world you see isn't the one that you exist in, and the one that's hidden holds the truth of who you really are and what you've really lost. The beach and the Theta realm both represent a liminal frontier, one filled with grief, ghosts, and the potential for transcendence. So what about the antidepressants and the similar medications? For that, let's talk about the mind. Or more specifically, how treating the mind can be seen as spiritual sabotage in Scientology. In Scientology, mental health isn't treated with therapy or medication. It's treated with auditing. L. Ron Hubbard's foundational system, Dianetics, teaches that psychiatric medications don't help, they harm. They dull the spirit, suppress the thetan, and make a person more vulnerable to being overturned by body thetans. Let me be clear. This is what Scientology teaches, not what I believe, and not what medical science supports. Modern medicine, for all of its flaws, particularly in the fact that it costs so much and there's barely any access to it in the United States because, God forbid, we get affordable or universal health care, remains the most effective way to treat physical and mental health issues. While not all doctors get it right, I've personally had a misdiagnosis and been prescribed medication that negatively affected my life. Those experiences are very rare. Overall, my interactions with healthcare providers have been positive, and I believe psychiatric medication can be incredibly helpful. There's nothing shameful about getting help, and I fully support taking what you need to feel better. But in Scientology, basically, if you pop a Xanax, you're spiritually compromised. At least according to Hubbard. Now, let's zoom our little selves over to Death Stranding. One of the game's core mechanics is making deliveries. But oddly enough, one of the most common delivery items that I see is smart drugs. They're mental health stabilizers, neutral enhancers, and anxiety medications. You name it, you deliver it. In a world falling apart physically and spiritually, the human race is leaning hard on pharmaceuticals just to stay functional. And ironically, this heavy reliance on medication comes at a cost: the rise of BTs. From a Dianetics lens, it makes a twisted kind of sense. The more you medicate, the more you suppress the spiritual self. The more numb, the more vulnerable you become to parasitic spiritual energy. In Death Stranding, the world's spiritual rot literally comes crawling out of the ocean and drags you under. It is a subtle but eerie parallel. The idea that the more humanity tries to fix itself, the more open the door of metaphysical collapse becomes. Personally, to me, it makes sense that while the world is ending and humans are trapped in isolation and they can't go outside, and if they unalive themselves, they'll then become a BT and trigger a void out, unaliving everyone around them that they love, that they might need some synthetic happy hormones. So, no judgment. I think they're doing the right thing for themselves. And now, for a little bit of technology. Let's talk about meters. Both Scientology and Death Stranding have tools designed to detect the unseen. In Scientology, this tool is an e-meter. Used during auditing sessions, it measures changes in electrodermal activity, essentially tracking how your body responds to certain thoughts, words, or memories. According to L. Ron Hubbard, this is how you detect engrams, spiritual scars, and the lingering influence of body thetans. Quick sidebar. Engrams should not be confused with enneagrams, which is a completely different system of personality typing. Now, before someone gets deep into the comments with, but how do they even get people to know about the engrams? Here's a fun fact. The Church of Scientology uses a recruitment tool called the Oxford Capacity Analysis, or the OCA. It's a free personality test that is neither Oxford affiliated or a scientific capacity measure. It's often used to draw people in with promises of personal insight, but it usually ends with a pitch for auditing services to get rid of a depression they didn't know they had. And we shall not discuss how my curious self knows this. The e-meter doesn't detect BTs like a scanner in a video game, of course. But to a Scientologist, it's a serious piece of spiritual tech. It reads spiritual interference, helping you know when something invisible is clinging to you. But now let's flip it over to Death Stranding. Enter the Otradeck, a mechanical, shoulder-mounted sensor that spins, twitches, and chirps in the presence of BTs. You'll rely on it constantly, especially when walking through timefall zones. It's your early warning system, and your only real defense in the first game against invisible entities. And here's the kicker. Even when you're not carrying a bridge baby, the Otradeck still works. It can still respond to spiritual threats, meaning it's more than just a biological interface. It is a freestanding sensor of the spiritual world, just like the e-meter. In both systems, you're scanning for invisible threats, you have a trauma and attachment to things clinging to your body or soul, and you need a tool to detect and sense those things clinging to you. Now, is Kojima saying the Otradeck is an e-meter? No. But functionally, they might as well be cousins. Both devices take an abstract and make it mechanical. They take belief and turn it into a feedback. And that's what makes them scary, because they make what's unseen feel real. And piggybacking off that last chapter, in Scientology, there are memory threats called engrams, painful, damaging experiences stored in what's called the reactive mind. These aren't just bad memories. According to Hubbard, engrams are spiritually embedded trauma patterns that keep you from reaching your full potential. They might come from this life, they might come from a past life. They might even be implanted by other thetans completely unrelated to your life, and they're the reason that you're suffering, which is why auditing exists. The whole purpose of the e-meter is to help clear, thus the term going clear, these engrams, releasing the thetan from its mental cage. Ironically, for a religion that dislikes psychiatry, its sole focus does seem to be on attempting to achieve the same goals as psychiatry. In Death Stranding, memory echoes operate almost the same way. When Sam links to a bridge baby, he begins experiencing vivid flashbacks. Some of these are from his own past. Some of these are from other people's lives, depending on which of the two games you're currently playing. And now, for the whole purpose of Scientology, what is the bridge to total freedom? In Scientology, that is not a metaphor. It is very literal. It's kind of like a structured pathway or a map to spiritual development designed by L. Ron Hubbard. The bridge outlines various levels of auditing, quote, spiritual counseling, end quote, and training that a practitioner must undergo in order to ascend. The first goal is to become clear, free of engrams and respective patterns. But that's just the beginning. Once you go clear, a Scientologist begins the process through the levels of an operating thetan, also known as OT, each level promising more awareness, power, and spiritual liberation. Operating thetans are believed to have regained control over the MEST. Again, that's matter, energy, space, and time. They're not gods exactly, but they're no longer bound to human condition. That's the promise, anyway. Now, take that framework and apply it to Death Stranding. Sam, at the start of the first game, is completely dependent on external tools, most notably his bridge baby pod, in which his daughter Lou is. His connection to the spiritual realm, the beach, and the BTs is limited and passive. He doesn't understand his gift, he simply endures it. But as the games progress, especially into Death Stranding 2, Sam becomes more attuned. His doom abilities sharpen, and by the second game, he can sense BTs without his pod, cross into the beach with some assistance, and influence events across metaphysical boundaries. He moves from Sam, who has a phobia and a chiral allergy to touch, to someone who understands and manipulates the spiritual infrastructures of the beach for his end goal of the world's salvation. Sound familiar? In both systems, Scientology and Death Stranding, there's no shortcut to enlightenment. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And once you cross the final threshold, you aren't the same person who started your journey. So, What have we uncovered here? At first glance, Death Stranding is a beautifully bizarre sci-fi epic. Not to mention, up until Baldur's Gate 3 found its way into my hands in August of 2023, Death Stranding was my all-time favorite game. I can get lost in it for hours, for days, for months. I come up from playing Death Stranding and I don't even remember what fucking decade it is. But peel back the layers, and what you find might look a lot like something else entirely. A mirror held up to a belief system that asks you to carry trauma as doctrine and promises you freedom only after you've bled and paid for it. As someone who grew up in a high-demand religious system, these parallels aren't an abstract to me. They're familiar. The weight of spiritual trauma, the language of deliverance, the idea that suffering is proof that you're getting closer to the truth. And that's what makes Death Stranding so potent and so relatable to me, whether Kojima intended it or not. It isn't just about rebuilding America. It's about confronting what belief does to people, how it isolates you, or how it saves you, and always how it demands. Because belief could set you free, or it can pull you under to the beach.
And before you go, a girlie gotta pay her bills. I mean, JK, I don't actually make enough to pay my bills doing books. But if I never share my work, then how do you know it exists? This is gonna be a reading from the first book in the Gemstone Souls series, which is a spicy, dark, poly-vampire romance with a lot of elements of the gods. My breath catches in my throat. This is the moment I've been waiting my whole damn life for, even if I never really believed it would come true. Every dark, twisted fantasy I ever whispered into my pillow, every hour spent buried in a dog-eared vampire romance, every time I stared into the night hoping that something unreal was going to be looking back. It's all here. And I don't know if I want to scream or if I want to swoon. I mean, every book talk babe wants to lose her virginity to a morally gray fictional man, right? The kind who'd throw you over his shoulder, say it's for your own good, and make you thank him for it. So maybe if vampires are real, I guess I could slide my V-card at his store, take a number, wait in line, let him stamp my receipt with his fangs. Grant doesn't fit that idea I had in my head. The dangerously hot, might be dead, might be my death kind of dream. One that smells like spice and sandalwood and trouble. A man who looks like he stepped out of another era and walked straight into my story. You know, one with midnight black hair and eyes that could rip your soul open. Golden brown skin like a god. But Grant, he might not fit, but it's a good way. One I didn't realize I wanted until now. He's beautiful in a way that just doesn't make sense. His face is all angles and quiet danger with cheekbones that could cut glass and eyes that don't just look. They see. Blue like ice, his skin like the sky before a storm, and his hair falls in soft waves, white blonde and unruly, brushing across his brows like it might never be tamed. He's the kind of gorgeous that makes you believe in sin. And for the first time in my life, I think I want to sin.
And with that, thank you for being here. Because writing and gaming, they're my passions. And with subscribers like you, I get to explore those passions, including in weird ways like today's video. And I hope I'll see you again in the next one. And good night, darling.
To everyone saying that Coldplay made 2 singles last night, you're all too funny, you should come work for me.